They say a picture is worth 1,000 words. But take a close look at this face. Is this the face of a grieving husband shattered by the sudden loss of his wife? Or is it the face of a man who is reeling from the egregious act he committed? Today, we're talking about Jolyan Silvera's case and how corrupt the Jamaican court system is. We're talking about a system that could convict Vybz Kartel when Clive Lizard Williams' body was never found. Yet, somehow, that same system got soft when a well-connected man from the hills is at the center of a "she died in her sleep" story. And don't get me wrong, I'm not here to say whether Vybz Kartel is guilty or not. I'm not a judge. God says to leave all judgment unto him. And if he is guilty, he should face the full length of the law. But I'm merely here to highlight the stark contrast of both stories. Because while the news is telling you what happened, that Jolyan pled guilty to manslaughter, nobody is telling you why this verdict is so troubling. And frankly, there are holes in this story big enough to drive a truck through. Jolyan Silvera calls it provocation. He said he lost control. But the math is not mathing. Was this justice or was this a business transaction? Peeps, pull up a chair. Stay with me. And before the end of this video, you're going to have to decide something. Was this justice or was this classism? To understand the outrage, we have to understand the timeline. The date was November 10, 2023. Sometime after 10:30 p.m., Jolyan Silvera told his wife and children he was leaving for a meeting. According to the statements from two of the children, an argument followed. Now listen to this part carefully. Shortly before 6 a.m. on November 11, the couple's 10-year-old son entered his parents' bedroom. That child discovered his mother laying on the floor beside the bed, bleeding. A 10-year-old boy saw his mother that way. He alerted his sibling, and the children contacted their father via a messaging app. And what happened next? The initial story fed to the public, to the family, to everyone was that Melissa Silvera died in her sleep from natural causes. The funeral was held, and we saw Jolyan Silvera breaking down in tears. But here's the thing about a lie. A lie requires consistency. And consistency leaves a trail. An autopsy was conducted in December 2023. And what did it find? It found 3 gunshot wounds. One to the thigh, one to the lower abdomen, and another to the abdomen. Ballistics later confirmed these bullets were fired from Jolyan Silvera's licensed Glock pistol. So now we have to ask, when we saw those tears at the funeral, was it grief? Or was it the pressure of a man realizing that the natural causes story was about to collide with forensic science? No. The story got even more interesting. And I'm going to say something that might ruffle some feathers, but it needs to be said. When investigators finally returned to the Stony Hill home in December 2023, weeks after Melissa's death, they noticed something shocking. The bedroom had been extensively altered. New tiling, fresh paint, furniture replaced. Even the mattress was changed. The scene of the alleged crime wasn't just cleaned, it was renovated. And when asked about it, Silvera reportedly said no one told him he couldn't make changes to the room. And you know what? He's right. Now let's stop right here for a minute, because I blame the police officer and I blame the system for such gross negligence. If this was a suspected crime scene, or even if it wasn't suspected yet, a woman died under uncertain circumstances. Why wasn't the scene secured immediately? The police were there. They were at the house. They saw the body. They saw the position she was found in, and yet they left. And nobody said to Jolyan Silvera, "Boss, don't touch anything. Don't paint, don't tile, don't move the furniture, because this is an open investigation." But this is not Silvera's job to know. This is Police Procedure 101. You secure the scene, you seal it, you post someone there if you have to. You don't just walk away and come back a month later wondering why everything changed. Now, if your wife tragically passed, would your first thought be, "Oh, let's call the Tylers"? No. But if nobody tells you not to, and you're trying to move past the trauma, some people might renovate to escape the memory. Or, in a darker scenario, to escape or erase the evidence. But here's the part that really haunts me. How did the police miss the blood? If Silvera felt the need to paint, to retile, and go as far as buying new furniture, then my assumption would be that there was probably blood on these areas. And I don't mean a spot. So let me ask the obvious question. When the police first responded, did they not see any of that blood? Did they look at Melissa Silvera's body, see no obvious wound because of the position she was found in, and just accepted that she died in her sleep? The story at face value? Did they not think to turn the body over? Did they not think a young woman died at home? Let's be thorough. So here is my theory, and it's just a theory. I believe the police did notice something wasn't right. Maybe they saw something at the scene that made them suspicious. Maybe the position of the body didn't look natural. Or maybe there were bruising, they couldn't explain. But instead of raising alarm immediately, remember we're dealing with a powerful man here. Instead of sealing the house, they made a decision. Let's wait for the autopsy. Let's wait for the forensic evidence. Let's not tip our hand. Meanwhile, Jolyan Silvera is at home thinking the natural cause story is holding. He's grieving, maybe panicking, doing a little calculating, and nobody, absolutely nobody from the police comes back to tell him, hold on, don't touch anything. So by the time the autopsy confirmed 3 gunshot wounds in December, the bedroom looks nothing like it did on November 11. The evidence is compromised. The prosecution's strongest tool, the physical scene, is now gone. So, peeps, who do we blame? Type it in the comment sections below. Because yes, Jolyan Silvera lied. Yes, his actions after the death raised every red flag imaginable. But the police, they dropped the ball in a way that might have cost this case its entire murder charge. Anyways, he was finally arrested and charged in January of 2024, and the trial was set for February 2nd, 2026. So now, how do we get from a murder charge with a body, a weapon, ballistics, and an altered scene to a manslaughter plea? The Office of the Director of Public Prosecutions raised a statement in the interest of transparency, and we have to read it carefully. The ODPP said, there is no evidence in the prosecution's possession that can speak to what occurred at the residence when the deceased was shot and unalived by the defendant. The prosecution had evidence of what happened before the argument. They had evidence of what happened after, which is the cover-up and the renovation. But they had no direct evidence of the exact moment the trigger was pulled. Then, the night before the trial, the defense submitted a signed statement from Silvera. On his account, he claimed that they had an argument that got physical. He claimed she blamed him for the death of their younger son, hurled expletives, and made derogatory remarks about his family. He claimed that during the argument, she made a comment about their children, which he found to be the final straw. And at that point, he lost control and discharged his weapon. Now, in Jamaican law, provocation is a partial defense. It doesn't say you didn't do it. It says you did it, but something happened that makes the law treat it as less than murder. And so the ODPP had to look at this account and ask, can we disprove this beyond a reasonable doubt? They cited the case of Gleaner versus R, which says that if an accused person's version doesn't support a murder conviction, the court shouldn't accept a murder plea. They also cited Perlina Wright versus R, which says a judge should sentence based on the facts more favorable to the accused if those facts cannot be disproved. The ODPP concluded that they could not evidentially negative the defense of provocation because they had no witness to the shooting, and because Silvera's account was the only detailed version of those final seconds, they accepted that a jury would likely have to consider manslaughter anyway, so they took the plea. Now, let's look at this sudden loss of control nonsense. The defense wants you to believe that he just snapped. Heat of passion. But let us use our common sense and walk through the house with Jolyan. First off, he was at home. So ask yourself, who walks around in their own living room, in the safety of their own home, with a loaded firearm strapped to their hip, or even worse, in their hand? Nobody. Absolutely nobody. A responsible licensed gun owner don't treat their living room like a war zone. When you're home, your gun is in the safe, locked away. I hope you guys see where I'm going with this. This is where the defense fell apart. Because if the gun is in the safe, there is no sudden anything. Think about his steps. He and Melissa are arguing. He has to stop arguing. He has to turn his back. He then has to walk away from the fight to go to the safe. Then he has to punch in his safe code, open that heavy door. Then he has to retrieve the weapon. After which, he has to walk back and continue his argument. Now that isn't reflex. That is a preemptive move. In the eyes of the law, the time it took him to retrieve his firearm was more than enough time for him to reconsider his course of action. But let's play the prosecutor's game. Let's play the devil's advocate for a second. The report said Jolyan was dressed and was about to leave for a meeting on the night of November 10th when the argument started. That could be their excuse as to why the gun wasn't in the safe. They'll say it was already holstered on his hip, right? Now, if you're heading to a legitimate business meeting, a social event, or a regular evening out, do you normally have your licensed firearm on your hip? I know the diehards in the comments will scream, "Oh, licensed carriers carry their firearm everywhere." Fine, I'll accept that. Let's assume he was fully armed for this mysterious meeting. That changes the timeline, doesn't it? If the gun is already on his hip, there's no walking to the safe, no punching in any code, there's no cooling off period. The weapon is right there, accessible in the split second of rage. But then, if that is the case, there's a massive hole in this story. A question that should be buzzing in your ear, like that annoying mosquito at midnight. Why didn't the kids hear the gunshots? We're talking about 3 shots inside a house at night, 3 loud bangs. The children were awake enough to hear their parents swearing at each other and to even hear Jolyan leaving the house. And yet, they didn't hear the shots. No neighbors heard it either. How is that logically possible? Unless he attached a silencer on this gun he was taking to his meeting. And then that would raise even more questions as to why he would want to resort to such a measure. Now pause right there. Pause. Think about what that implies. A silencer isn't something you just have laying around on the coffee table. A silencer is deliberate. A silencer is preparation. And if there was a suppressor on that weapon, he doesn't just challenge the heat of passion defense. It blows it straight out of the water. You don't accidentally attach a silencer in a fit of rage. You don't pause a screaming match to attach a suppressor to a gun unless you have a very specific intention. A silencer on a gun suggests one thing, and one thing only. You don't want anyone to hear that loud impact from the gun when it is discharged. That isn't loss of control. That is a calculated decision to kill quietly. Now listen, peeps, I want to stress this again. These are just my thoughts. These are not facts presented in the court. I don't have any evidence of a silencer. I don't know for sure if the gun was on him or in the safe. Again, I am not a judge. I am not a juror. I'm just a commentator looking at the same gaps in the story that you're looking at. Now let's stop beating around the bush. Let's add some teeth to this story and make the comparison that everyone is thinking about, but nobody on the news wants to say it out loud. We have to talk about Adidja Palmer, Vybz Kartel. And listen, family, put your feelings aside. This is not about Gaza versus Jolyan. This is not about innocent or guilty. This is about the system. So in 2014, the Jamaican justice system performed a miracle. They convicted Vybz Kartel of murder without the one thing you usually need for a murder conviction: a body. Think about it. No corpse, no remains of Clive Lizard Williams were ever found. Zero. The prosecution built that case on what they called invisible highways. They used cell tower pings, they used text messages, they used voice notes. The state worked overtime. 65 days of trial, 34 witnesses, sweating in court to prove that a man was murdered, even though they couldn't produce the dead man. They hunted him down with ones and zeros. They proved intent with digital ghosts. And the full weight of the system came down like a sledgehammer to ensure that he got a life sentence. Nobody, no problem, said the justice system. We will find a way. Now, turn your eyes back to Jolyan Silvera's case. And I want you to put the two cases on the scale and tell me if they seem balanced. In Vybz Kartel's case, there was no body, no murder weapon found. In Jolyan Silvera's case, the body was found lying right there. The weapon was found. The ballistics matched to his licensed firearm. The witnesses, his own children, heard the argument between him and his wife and later discovered his wife. The cover-up, an altered crime scene, and a lie about her dying in her sleep. So now I need somebody to explain this to me like I am 5 years old. If the system can use invisible highways to convict a dance hall artist of murder when there is no body, how does that same system look at a politician with the body, the gun, the bullets, and the lies all stacked up in high definition and say, you know what? Let's just call it manslaughter. It's the question Sir P has been preaching on for years. And today, it's screaming at us. Geography is justice. If Jolyan Silvera's address was in Spanish Town instead of Stony Hill, if his name was Scrappy instead of Silvera, do you honestly believe the Director of Public Prosecution's office would have accepted a plea? Or would they have used that provocation as evidence of a cold-blooded man who had time to open a safe, load a gun, and finish the job? The math is mathing, because in Jamaica, it seems like we have one law for the garrison and a suggestion box for the gallery. Let's look at another case with a different outcome. 2003. Police Constable Lesine Edwards. His partner is found dead from a gunshot wound. He claims suicide. The prosecution claims murder. The police ordered the scene to be cleaned. The police. Just like Silvera, forensic evidence was compromised. Yet, unlike Silvera, the state didn't offer a plea. They went for the throat. Edwards was convicted of murder and sentenced to life. He served nearly 10 years before the Privy Council quashed the conviction in 2022, calling it a miscarriage of justice. This isn't just about a plea deal. It was about whether the scale of justice in Jamaica weigh gold differently than they weigh blood. So let me leave this with you. We just walked through 3 cases, 3 Jamaican men, 3 deaths, 3 different outcomes. Now, I'm not saying any of these men are innocent or guilty. That's not my job. My job is to look at the patterns. And the patterns, peep, is this. Where you live determines how the law treats you. If you're from the garrison, the system moves mountains to convict you, even when the evidence is thin, even when statements might be forged, even when you maintain your innocence for decades. And if you're in the hills, the system finds provocation. It finds extenuating circumstances. It offers a plea deal before the jury even gets a chance to decide. The ODPP made a legal decision based on the evidence they had. They followed the law. I am not disputing that. But here's the question that should keep you up at night. The one that I want you, my fellow Jamaicans, to answer. If the bedroom hadn't been renovated, if the police had secured that scene on November 11 instead of walking away, would the evidence have told a different story? Would we be having a different conversation right now? Melissa Silvera is unalive. Her 10-year-old son found her body. That child will carry that image for the rest of his life. Her family sat in that courthouse and watched a murder charge become a manslaughter plea. They said they were praying for justice. But right now, the scales of justice don't look balanced. They look like a seesaw. And some of us are sitting on the ground while others are lifted high. They say justice is blind, but in Jamaica, it seems like justice can smell your bank account. It can smell your address, and it treats you accordingly. Melissa Silvera deserved better. Her children deserved better. And Jamaica deserves a system where the answer to who unalived who doesn't depend on your postal code. So now if this video made you uncomfortable, good. Because that means you're paying attention. And I want you to hit that like button and share it with somebody who needs to hear it. Let the algorithm know that Jamaica is alive. Subscribe to Everything Jamaica Trending for the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. And as always, walk good and protect your peace.